My wife stole from our joint account to fund her affair, so I emptied the rest and let her explain it to the police herself. I'm a 33-year-old guy, and I thought marriage meant being a team. For 6 years, I truly believed my wife, Sarah, and I were that, partners. I worked as an IT technician, clocking in long hours so we could live comfortably in our small but cozy house. Sarah freelanced from home doing design projects, or at least that's what I thought. She handled most of our bills, and we had a joint account because she said, "Transparency builds trust." It sounded fair at the time. Our life wasn't perfect, but it felt steady. We had our little routines, takeout Fridays, lazy Sunday mornings, and movie nights where she'd fall asleep halfway through. I'd look at her and feel grateful. After all, who wouldn't want to come home to someone who says they believe in partnership? That belief was the foundation of everything for me. But lately, something felt off. Sarah had started keeping her phone face down, setting passwords on her laptop, and locking the office door when I was around. When I'd ask what she was working on, she'd smile, tired and distant, and say, "Client work. Deadlines are killing me." Her answers were always short, too short. Sometimes I'd come home early and find her startled, like she wasn't expecting me. I told myself not to overthink it. Everyone goes through stressful phases, right? She said her clients were getting demanding, and I wanted to be supportive, not suspicious. Still, I couldn't shake this weird feeling in my chest, a quiet, gnawing unease that something invisible was growing between us. That night, while washing dishes, I glanced at her phone lighting up across the counter. She rushed to grab it before I could even see who it was. Her voice was calm, but her hands trembled, and in that moment, something inside me whispered, "This wasn't the same woman I married." The thought lingered long after she went to bed, and I couldn't stop wondering what she was hiding from me. A few weeks passed, and that uneasy feeling refused to fade. It was like living with a stranger who still knew how to smile like my wife. One Saturday morning, while Sarah was out meeting a client, I sat down to do our taxes. I wasn't snooping. I just needed to check our savings. But when I opened our joint account, my heart dropped. The balance was lower than it should have been. A lot lower. At first, I thought I'd made a mistake. Maybe a payment hadn't cleared, or she'd paid something big I'd forgotten about. But as I scrolled, I saw charges I couldn't explain. Fancy restaurants, expensive hotel stays, boutique purchases. I stared at the screen in disbelief. We lived modestly. Sarah always said we needed to save for the future. So why were hundreds of dollars disappearing every week? That night I asked her about it as casually as I could. "Hey, I noticed the savings look a little off. Did we have any big expenses lately?" She barely looked up from her laptop. "Oh yeah," she said quickly. "I paid off some old medical bills. You know, the ones from my dental surgery last year." Her tone was steady, but she didn't meet my eyes. And something about how rehearsed that sounded made my stomach twist. When she went to bed, I opened the account again, refreshing the page as if the truth might change. But it didn't. More transactions had appeared since the morning. A $212 restaurant bill, a $98 ride service charge, another $350 for a spa retreat. I sat there in the dark, staring at the glow of the screen. Every number felt like a small betrayal written in code. My chest felt tight, my pulse loud in my ears. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. But deep down, I knew this wasn't about forgotten bills or stress. Something was very wrong, and I couldn't stop wondering what I'd find if I kept digging. I tried to tell myself I was overreacting. Maybe Sarah had just forgotten to mention something, or maybe those expenses really were for work. Still, the thought gnawed at me day and night. So one evening, after dinner, I decided to bring it up again, carefully this time. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice calm, "about those charges from the hotel. Were those for one of your clients?" She froze mid-bite, then forced a little laugh. "Yeah, it's a group booking thing. I use my card and they reimburse me later." Why?" Her tone was light, but her eyes flickered. I pressed gently. "You didn't mention you were working with clients who needed hotel stays. That sounds unusual." That's when her whole demeanor changed. Her shoulders stiffened, her smile vanished. "So, now you're keeping tabs on me? You think I'm lying to you?" Her voice was sharp, accusing. I hadn't raised mine, but suddenly I was the one defending myself. "I'm not accusing you, Sarah. I just want to understand." She sighed dramatically, shaking her head. "You've become paranoid lately. Maybe you should trust me instead of playing detective." She grabbed her plate and walked off to the kitchen, leaving me sitting there in silence, wondering how a simple question had turned into an argument. That night, while she worked in her office, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Every sound in the house felt heavier than usual. The faint hum of her laptop, the clack of her keyboard, the occasional nervous shuffle of her chair. It hit me. Then that I was scared. Not of losing money, but of confirming what my gut already knew. I wanted so badly to believe my wife wasn't capable of betrayal, but her lies were getting too easy, too practiced. And somewhere between her sighs and her accusations, I realized she wasn't trying to reassure me. She was trying to make me stop asking questions. And that realization terrified me more than anything. It happened on a Wednesday night, one of those quiet evenings where everything seems painfully normal. I'd just gotten home from a long shift, exhausted, while Sarah was in the kitchen pretending to work on her laptop. I tossed my phone onto the counter and went to take a shower. When I came back, I noticed her phone buzzing where she'd left it beside the sink. Normally, she never left it unattended. The screen lit up, and my stomach twisted as I read the preview of the text. "Same hotel tonight? Can't wait to see you again." The message wasn't from a client. It was from someone named Eli. Work. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The air in the kitchen felt thick, heavy. I stared at that name for what felt like minutes before the phone buzzed again, this time with a heart emoji. I didn't need to see more. My hands shook as I picked up her phone and, for the first time in 6 years, opened it. Every instinct told me not to. But once I started, I couldn't stop. There they were. Weeks, maybe months, of messages. Photos. Hotel receipts. Voice notes that made my throat go dry. I saw transfers from our joint account labeled business payments, each one followed by some affectionate message like, "Dinner's on me tonight, babe." When she walked in, humming like nothing had happened, I froze. She smiled, kissed my cheek, and asked, "Everything okay?" I nodded. I don't even know how. My voice barely worked. That night I lay next to her pretending to sleep while she texted under the covers. The soft glow of her phone illuminated the truth I couldn't unsee. My heart pounded, my mind screamed, but I stayed still. Because I knew, if I confronted her now, she'd twist it. She'd make me doubt myself again. So instead, I decided to stay quiet. Watch, wait, and make sure when the truth came out, it would destroy her lies completely. After that night, something inside me went cold. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just shut down. I spent the next few days pretending everything was normal, smiling when she spoke, kissing her goodbye when she left for her client meetings. She thought she was fooling me, but every lie she told was another thread in the web she was wrapping around herself. I started gathering evidence quietly. While she showered, I forwarded screenshots of her messages and bank transactions to my email. I printed copies of her receipts, hotel stays, transfers labeled Eli, work, designer store purchases. Every time I found something new, my chest burned with anger, but I forced myself to stay calm. I wanted this done right. One evening, while Sarah was out, I called the bank. My voice trembled as I explained that I needed a full record of transactions from the past 3 months. When the representative emailed me the report, my hands nearly dropped the phone. Over $8,000. Gone. Withdrawn in cash, spent at restaurants, hotels, and luxury stores. My wife had been funding her affair with our money. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the dining table staring at the evidence spread before me, the dim kitchen light flickering over the papers. Every page told the same story, a betrayal both emotional and financial. I wasn't just losing her. I'd already lost the man I used to be. Trusting, loyal, maybe even naive. But beneath the heartbreak, something else started to grow. Clarity. I realized if she was willing to use our shared account for her secret life, she wouldn't stop until I had nothing left. So I opened a new account under my name only, transferred what was left, about $6,000, and locked it down tight. By the time Sarah came home, humming and tipsy from another work dinner, I had already decided. I wouldn't confront her yet. I would let her bury herself, and make sure she had to explain every lie to someone who wouldn't believe her excuses. Once I secured the remaining money, I needed to understand how deep her lies went. The story she'd built about freelance design clients suddenly made no sense. No invoices, no business emails, nothing. So, one afternoon while she was at the gym, I went into her home office. Her laptop was locked, but she'd forgotten to sign out of her email on the desktop. What I found made my skin crawl. There were no client messages, no project files, no payment records. Every single invoice she'd shown me over the years was fake, templates with random company names and bogus email threads she'd written to herself. She hadn't been freelancing at all. The past 2 years had been one elaborate illusion. Then came the real twist. I searched one of the email addresses listed on an invoice. It led me to a social media profile, Eli's. Not a client, but a married man who managed a nearby fitness center. His page was filled with pictures of his wife and 2 kids. My stomach turned. I realized my wife hadn't just betrayed me. She was helping this guy live a double life, too. I kept digging until I found a public post from Eli's wife, dated just 2 months ago. It read, "Starting over. Divorce isn't the end. It's the beginning." That's when it hit me. Sarah wasn't just having an affair. She'd been funding it. The expensive dinners, the hotels, the designer gifts, they weren't for her. They were for him. She had been stealing from me to impress another man. I sat there in stunned silence, the air heavy with disbelief. For years, I thought Sarah's clients were her independents. Turns out they were her cover story for deceit, but instead of confronting her right away, I smiled to myself. She thought she was in control. She had no idea I now knew everything, and I was about to make her explain every dollar to the very people she feared most. For days, I kept up the act. I played the part of the loving, oblivious husband, even as my stomach churned every time she kissed me goodnight. I wanted her to think everything was normal, because soon, she was going to walk right into the trap she'd set for herself. That Friday evening, she got dressed in one of her expensive new outfits, the kind I hadn't seen before the affair. "Client dinner," she said with a forced smile, adjusting her earrings. I nodded, pretending not to notice the perfume that wasn't mine. "Have fun," I said, and she gave me a half-hearted peck before leaving. While she was gone, I sat in the living room with a folder full of evidence beside me, screenshots, receipts, and the bank's confirmation that her withdrawals had triggered a fraud alert due to inconsistent spending. I'd spoken to the bank earlier that day, reporting the unauthorized use of joint funds. They agreed to flag her account for review. The wheels were already in motion. When she got home past midnight, slightly drunk and smelling like cologne, I was sitting at the kitchen table. "Rough night?" I asked. She looked startled but tried to play it off. "Yeah, client meeting ran late," I smiled faintly. "Which client?" "The one from the hotel again?" The color drained from her face. What are you talking about?" I leaned back. "You should probably check the bank account." She rushed to her phone, her fingers trembling. Within seconds, she realized the balance was zero. I'd transferred every cent to my private account. She turned toward me, eyes wide, voice trembling with rage. "You had no right to do that." "I had every right," I said quietly. "It's called protecting myself." For the first time, she looked scared. Not guilty, scared, because she could tell from my calmness that I wasn't bluffing. And that's when I told her the truth. "I know about Eli. I know where our money went." And I've already reported the account for review. She didn't scream this time. She just stood there, pale and silent, realizing her lies were about to collapse, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. The silence after I said those words felt like thunder. Sarah's face crumbled, shock giving way to panic. You went to the bank?" she stammered. I didn't answer. I just watched as she clutched her phone, frantically scrolling through our account, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. Her breathing quickened, eyes darting back and forth. "You can't just take everything. That's our money." "Our money?" I repeated, my voice calm but cold. "You mean the same money you used to buy hotel rooms and gifts for another man?" Her hands shook. "Please, it's not what you think. He just needed help. Things got complicated. I was going to pay it back." I laughed, a dry, hollow sound that didn't feel like me. "You were going to pay it back with what? The fake invoices? The non-existent freelance jobs?" For a moment, she tried to regain control. Her tone softened. "We can fix this. I made a mistake, but I still love you." The desperation in her eyes almost fooled me. Almost. "Fix this?" I said quietly. "You stole from me, Sarah. That's not a mistake. That's a choice." Her voice broke as she whispered, "Please don't ruin my life." But it was already too late. The next morning, her phone started ringing non-stop, first from an unknown number, then from the bank. She ignored it at first, but when the same number called again and left a voicemail, curiosity got the better of her. I stood by the doorway, watching her pale as she listened. A recorded voice from the fraud department explained that irregular withdrawals and unauthorized transactions had been detected on her joint account, and she needed to contact them. Immediately, her head snapped up, eyes wide. "What did you do?" "Nothing," I said, leaning against the frame. "I just told the truth." She stared at me like a cornered animal. "They're going to freeze everything," she whispered. I nodded slowly. "Then I guess you'd better start explaining to them." Her phone slipped from her trembling hands as she realized, for the first time, that her lies had left a paper trail she couldn't talk her way out of. That night was the loudest kind of quiet. Sarah sat on the couch, her face buried in her hands, sobbing between frantic bursts of denial. "They're overreacting," she muttered. "I'll just tell them it was a misunderstanding." But her voice wavered with every word. I didn't answer. I just stood there, numb, watching the woman I thought I knew unravel into someone I didn't recognize. The next morning, she was gone. Her clothes, her laptop, half of her things, gone. No goodbye, no note. Just silence. Part of me hoped she'd realize the damage she'd done and call, but deep down, I knew this was who she really was. Someone who ran when consequences came knocking. Days later, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. "Mr. Dawson?" a man's voice said. "This is Detective Hall from the Financial Crimes Division. We're following up on the report regarding unauthorized withdrawals from your joint account." My heart sank. I hadn't expected it to move this fast. The detective explained they'd uncovered multiple transfers made under Sarah's name, some of which linked to another account tied to Eli Turner. I closed my eyes as he continued. "We'll likely need a statement from you. It seems there's enough to open a full investigation." After the call ended, I just sat there, staring at the empty living room. Every echo in that space felt heavier than before. 6 years of laughter, memories, inside jokes, gone. All replaced by this cold, hollow stillness. That was my rock bottom. Not because she'd left, but because I finally understood how blind I'd been. I gave her everything. Trust, security, love, and she turned it into a weapon against me. I remember sitting at our dining table that night, looking at her empty chair and whispering to myself, how did it come to this? But in that moment, something shifted. I realized this wasn't the end of my story. It was just the point where I stopped being the victim and started taking my life back. The detective's call lingered in my mind for days. I couldn't escape the sound of his voice. Calm, factual, final. It was the first time someone else had said out loud what I had been too afraid to admit. My wife had committed a crime. Not just a betrayal of love, but of trust, legality, and humanity. And now she'd have to answer for it. A week later, I was called down to the precinct to finalize my statement. Sitting across from the detective, I handed over everything: bank statements, screenshots, and printed copies of her fake invoices. He flipped through the pages, occasionally whistling under his breath. She was thorough, he said, but not thorough enough. They already had records of Eli's involvement. Apparently, his wife had filed her own complaint after finding out Sarah had funneled joint funds into his personal account. It wasn't just infidelity anymore, it was collusion. When I left the station, a strange calm settled over me. For the first time in months, I wasn't angry. I wasn't heartbroken. I was just free. The truth was no longer something I had to hide or question. It was written in official documents, sealed in case files. Justice was in motion, and it didn't need my emotion to carry it. That evening, Sarah called. Her voice was small, hoarse, like someone who hadn't slept in days. "Please," she said, "they're saying I could be charged. You have to tell them it was a misunderstanding. I'll pay you back." I stayed silent. "Please, I made a mistake," she said again, crying. "You can't let them ruin me." I finally spoke, my voice steady. "You ruined yourself, Sarah. I just stopped covering for you." She went quiet. Then, a faint click. The call ended. I stared at my phone, feeling nothing. Not satisfaction, not pity. Just the kind of peace that comes when the storm has already torn everything apart, and you're standing in what's left, realizing you finally survived it. 3 weeks later, she showed up at my doorstep. I almost didn't recognize her. The woman standing there wasn't the confident, polished version of Sarah I used to know. She looked hollow. Her hair was messy, her eyes red and sunken, and her hands trembled as she held a crumpled envelope. "Please, just hear me out," she whispered. Her voice cracked, barely audible over the wind. I didn't invite her in. I simply stood in the doorway, arms crossed, waiting. She swallowed hard. "They froze my accounts," she said. "I can't access anything. I need help hiring a lawyer." Her lips quivered. "You have to believe me. I never meant for any of this to happen." I let the words hang in the air. "You didn't mean to lie for years? To steal from me? To fund an affair with our savings?" Her eyes filled with tears. "It wasn't like that. I made mistakes. I thought I could fix it before it got this far." I shook my head. "You didn't want to fix it, Sarah. You wanted to keep getting away with it." She took a step closer. "Please, I'm begging you. Just tell them it was a misunderstanding. Say I had your permission. They'll believe you." That line, "they'll believe you," was what finally broke whatever pity I had left. I looked at her, not as my wife, but as the stranger who'd burned my life down with her lies. "I'm not lying for you," I said quietly. "Not again. You stole from me. You betrayed me. You get to explain that, to them." Her tears came harder now, her voice turning desperate. "You're heartless," she screamed. "You want to watch me fall apart?" I met her eyes, my tone flat. "No, Sarah. I just want to stop being the one you destroy." She stared at me for a long moment, like she was realizing, maybe for the first time, that there was no version of this story where I saved her. Then she turned and walked away, sobbing into the night. I closed the door slowly, the sound echoing through the empty house like the final punctuation mark on everything she'd broken. Months passed. The house felt lighter now, still quiet but no longer suffocating. The investigation wrapped up in early spring. Sarah accepted a plea deal, probation, restitution, and a permanent mark on her record. I didn't celebrate. I didn't even attend the final hearing. I didn't need to see her one last time to feel closure. The court order and repayment agreement were enough. Justice had spoken for me. In the weeks that followed, I rebuilt piece by piece. I closed the old joint account, opened a new one under my name only, and started therapy to work through the aftermath. For the first time in years, my money, my peace, and my choices were mine alone. I found a new apartment closer to work, bought secondhand furniture, and filled the space with quiet, real, peaceful quiet, not the tense silence that used to hang between us. Every so often, I'd get an envelope in the mail, small monthly repayments from Sarah's restitution order. No note, no apology, just money returned to the man she'd once called her husband. I never cashed the first few. Eventually, I did, not because I needed the money, but because it was proof that even the most manipulative people can't outrun accountability forever. One night, sitting in that new apartment, I reread the official letter from the court. Case closed. I folded it neatly and slipped it into a drawer, not out of sentiment, but as a reminder. A reminder that silence and patience can sometimes cut deeper than rage. I used to think revenge meant shouting, exposing, breaking things. But I learned the opposite. The real revenge was walking away with my dignity, my stability, and my peace intact, while she was left explaining her lies to a system that didn't love her enough to believe them. And as I sat there, watching the city lights flicker through my window, I realized something. She'd taken my trust once, but in losing her, I'd taken my life back.